Hi everyone, so in today's video, I'm going to be doing another line edit with me, live line edit video. I've done 2 other videos like this. This one's going to be more in line with the first one, where I don't actually have the line edit prepared. I'm just gonna go in blind and hopefully figure it out. So somebody on my blog asked if I could do a video like this, but focusing mostly on specificity, and so I thought I would do that because I love specificity. Of course, this video is probably going to cover more problems, so I will leave everything in timestamps for you. I actually have 3 excerpts you're looking at, one of them. Here's the second one, and then the third one. I'm gonna format this document. So like I said, I haven't looked at these excerpts before. This is gonna be my first time actually editing them and reading them for a long time. I just basically paged through my old work and I found something that seemed like it would work. Here's a disclaimer. I wrote these excerpts in particular from this video. 2 of them were written when I was 13 and 1 of them was written when I was 16. So they are quite old. I am turning 19 in September, so they're not recent work. I'm not saying these excerpts are examples of good writing, nor am I saying they're excerpts of bad writing. So all of the edits that I'm going to make in this video are completely subjective. Let's start with this excerpt here, which is this excerpt of family portrait that my narrator Reeve is looking at in her friend Foster's house. So this excerpt is actually taken from book 2 of the Fostered series. Again, I wrote this when I was 13 and I actually really liked writing this particular part of the novel. It says, "I look back up and into his living room, making out the fading yellow painted walls, flower painting hung up on the walls, then a family picture. I squint through the darkness of the room, trying to look further at the picture, see it in detail. I drop my spoon into my bowl, pushing out of my chair and walking over to the family picture. Its frame is a copper color, rustic looking, all made out with intricate twists and curves along it, a slight worn look to it. But that's not the thing that's really catching my eye. I brush my hand over the photograph, staring at it. Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, a slight worn look to her face, same blue-gray eyes. My eyes shift over to his father, tall and lean, thick-rimmed glasses on his face, same blue-gray eyes. Then perched in front of them is Holly, bright smile, dark hair slicked back in a ponytail, same blue-gray eyes, but there's no Foster. And from the looks of this picture, it's relatively new and they haven't bothered to take it down, take one with him." So I actually quite like this excerpt. Good job, 13-year-old Rachel. So a few things I would note about this. It is definitely not bad by any means. Clearly, it's a quite descriptive excerpt, which is great because it was really hard for me to find description in my old work. I like the voice here. We have some repetition, same blue-gray eyes, same blue-gray eyes. Clearly, she's noticing something. Our narrator, Reeve, I only really started line editing when I was about 15 or 16. And so this didn't really get much of a pass. It probably got a little bit of a pass, but there's a repetition of the word walls right in the beginning sentence. So I just have to clean it up a little bit and punch up some of these details so that they're a little less extraneous. As you can see, we have like fading yellow painted walls. Like that's a lot of words to describe something. Flower painting, that could be specified a little bit more. And then there's this description of the frame. Its frame is a copper color, rustic looking, all made out with intricate twists and curves along it, a slight worn look to it. This is actually the beginnings of a pretty good description. I like the beginning part, like its frame is copper color, rustic looking. I just think it needs a bit more refinement. So I think this is a great excerpt for specificity. So I look back up and into his living room. I'm just going to change this. I look into his living room, making out the fading yellow painted walls, flower painting hung up on the walls, then a family picture. You know what? I'm just going to delete the I look. And let's just start here. So we're talking about the living room. Let's just jump right into it. So on the wall of his living room, I could say hung on the wall of his living room is family portrait. Okay, never mind. I'm going to change this. I'm going to say his living room walls, not his. I mean, that makes it sound like they are Foster. So let's change that to the walls of his living room. Delete this here. Are faded yellow. Make it easy. Decorated with impasto paintings of lilies. Lilies are really basic. Let's look up like a more interesting. Wow, look at that spelling. My whole mindset right now is flower painting. Flower painting. Flower is a specific detail, but this is what I would call a vague specific detail, where essentially it is specific because we're specifying what the painting is. So intrinsically, it has specificity to it. However, it is a vague specific detail. So we said flower, but like what kind of flower? So if you are looking at your writing and you are trying to punch up your specificity, a good way to do that is to look at your already specific details and try to punch them up. I talked about this in my last video, so if you missed that, I had some good things on specificity in that video too. Essentially, look for these vague specific words and try to find an even more specific way to say that. So right now, flower's a noun, but it's kind of a vague noun. What kind of flower? What's the color of the flower? To me, I personally really like the names of flowers. You could say blue flowers, and that would still be specific. However, I would rather say forget-me-not. Looking at species of plants, looking at a shade of a color, look at a type of tree, look at the name of that particular body of water, like something specific. Adding specific details to me is essentially moving away from just like the black pepper and salt of writing. We want to add some saffron, you know, saffron's the most expensive spice because it's like snazzy, you know? We want snazz, basically. We're adding the snazziness to the writing. Nobody uses the word snazzy anymore, but apparently I am. The word flower in this instance is not very snazzy. It's basic. You know, everybody knows what a flower looks like. And so what we want to do is we want to move away from this vague detail and add something a little bit more specific. Not only will specifics make your writing stronger, it will actually enhance your voice. So if there are particular details that you might draw on, for example, if all of the specific details you draw on are a little bit more scientific, that's going to say something about the voice of your character, for example. Some people might beg to differ that using a vague detail is better because everybody can imagine what they want. I don't really see the point in using vague details in your writing because it's your writing and you should want to convey something and you have a vision and you want to set that vision to a reader. So instead of putting all the responsibility on the reader to figure it out, I would prefer to write it the way I see it, the way that I want it to be seen. So that's my hot take on why I love specificity, because it really does add a little more flavor to the writing. Whereas using a word like flower, I'm not dragging the word flower, but using a word like flower is essentially playing it safe. Specificity is removing that safety net, and I really love it for that reason. I could talk about specificity for forever. Anyway, so back to flower. I always refer to lists like this, and immediately I'm seeing this one, gardenias. Let's look up what that looks like. Really pretty. That's nice. I definitely think that suits the vibe of this painting, like the paintings that this affluent family would have in their house. The walls of his living room are faded yellow, decorated with impasto paintings of gardenias. And what's another one? Calla lilies. There. The word calla in calla lilies, I'm all about sound in my writing. So another tip for if you want to write specifically, look at the musicality of the words that you're choosing. For me, the word lily is not as musical as calla lily. I don't know why. I just think it's that double L sound. To me, writing is a very auditory experience because you can almost hear words when you see them on the page. So the way that things look aesthetically is also highly important, and also the way they sound. So really focus on musicality because that's something that's going to enhance the rhythm of your writing and the flow of your prose and enhance your style as well. So I'm going to add that because I like calla lilies. That's pretty. The walls of his living room are faded yellow and decorated with impasto paintings of gardenias and calla lilies. This sentence I didn't really love the structure of. It's a bit clunky. It's like I look back up and into his living room, making out the fading yellow painted walls, flower painting hung up on the walls, and a family picture. It's a little bit clunky. So we're going to declunk that by just adding a full stop. Let's just delete that. The walls of his living room are faded yellow and decorated. Let's say tiled. I really like this idea. It kind of gives a bit more, I changed the word decorated to tiled. It gives a bit more of a visual cue as to what this wall looks like. It's not just decorated with something, which could mean anything. Tiled with impasto paintings of gardenias and calla lilies in the center, let's say, of the mosaic, which kind of works with the tiled. I'm linking my verb and my noun. So the verb here is tiled. and I'm adding the word mosaic here. I love doing this. This is, again, a great way to add voice into your writing. Link the verbs and the nouns together. So I said that the wall is tiled with impasto paintings. So in the center of this mosaic, instead of saying in the center of the wall, okay, whatever, that's fine. It's not bad, but instead, I'm saying in the center of the mosaic, which is very much in line with the word tile. Let's just move away from this for a second. Here's the next sentence. I squint through the darkness of the room, trying to look further at the picture, see it in detail. To be honest, she's not that far from the picture. I'm just going to look at logic for a second. Like, she's not really that far. Maybe she's 10, 15 feet. I don't know feet. I'm actually not American, so, like, I don't even know what that would mean. Let's say, like, she's, like, 10 meters away from this. She's not very close, but she's not very far. So I feel like you'd be able to see it. So I'm just going to delete this. I drop my spoon into my bowl, pushing out of my chair and walking over to the family picture. I guess the whole point of this is what I'm saying is she's supposed to be shocked that she's seeing, oh my God, they didn't include him, Foster, in the, did I say it was Foster? It's Foster. They didn't include Foster in their family photo. And that would make sense because Foster is not a part of this family's life. Now he's regained a relationship with his family, and they haven't even added him to their family portrait, even though this particular family portrait, like, who does that? Who even gets family portraits painted? This particular family portrait, they haven't even invited him to be in it, even though he was reunited with the family at that point. So that kind of reveals character. I could say something like this, like, it's the center. It's what's in the center of the mosaic that catches my attention. I don't love it, but that's okay. I drop my spoon into my bowl. The milk. We're going to describe what's in her bowl. She's eating cereal, if I can remember that correctly. Gone lilac and gummy with cereal. Okay, so I changed that to I drop my spoon into my bowl, the milk gone lilac and gummy with cereal. I don't think I meant lilac. I think I meant pastel and gummy. Whatever. Okay, that'll be fine. I drop my spoon into my bowl, the milk gone pastel and gummy with cereal. Push out of my chair and walk over to the family. That's what I'm going to do. Me narrating what I'm going to write down. So push out of my chair and walk closer. Let's just change that word to closer to the family picture. So now this looks something like this. The walls of his living room are faded yellow and tiled with impasto paintings of gardenias and calla lilies. I don't even know if impasto painting is like the correct way to say this. I guess I'm an artist. I can say this, right? Tiled with impasto paintings of gardenias and calla lilies. It's what's in the center of the mosaic that catches my attention. Now looking back on this, I don't know both of these flowers are necessary. I'm going to leave it. I feel like it's now a little overly specific, so it's kind of sticking out a little, but that's okay. I'm just going to leave it. I drop my spoon into my bowl, the milk gone pastel and gummy with cereal, push out of my chair and walk closer to the family picture. Is it a family picture? Oh, it's a picture, not a painting. Wow, that was so unclear. Okay, we'll just say the portraits, just to, what is it? The portrait's frame, we're specifying what it is. I guess this is like 3 people, so would that count as a portrait? I'm also a photographer, don't you think I should know? The portrait's frame is a copper color, rustic looking, I like this rusting looking, all made out with intricate, I'll just say all intricate twists and bends like the bough of redwood, maybe? Coniferous? Oh, conifers. How the hell do you pronounce that? Redwood tree. I live in Toronto. Oh, yeah, here we go. Candelabra redwood. So let's just, bend. I don't even know if that's correct. So we're just going to call that that. The portrait's frame is a copper color, rustic looking, all intricate twists and bends like the bough of a redwood. So a slight worn look to it. I don't really think that's necessary. I'm going to delete this detail about the frame looking old because does anybody really have frames like this and call it modern? So what I did here is I just added a specific detail by saying redwood. Before it was just like all intricate twists and whatever it was before. All intricate twists and curves. So I just changed the twists and curves along it to bends like the bough of a redwood. We have a bit more of like a vivid image to call upon when we're thinking about what this particular frame would look like, and thinking about the one that is currently in my basement, I definitely think that that's pretty accurate. That sort of like chunky engraving style frame. And like I said, I'm going to delete this, a slight worn look to it. I just don't think that's very necessary. But that's not the thing that's really catching my eye. I don't really know if that's necessary. That's not really the thing catching my eye. We're in first person. We don't really need like information like that. If whatever she's looking at and describing is what's catching her eye. I brush my hand over the photograph, staring at it. Well, we know she's looking at it if she's brushing her hand over it and describing it. So I'm just going to delete that. So Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, a slight worn look to her face. A slight worn look to her face. Wary? And like, okay, so let's characterize his mother a little bit. So let's say that she's wary, like she's unprepared for the photographer to take the photo. That's a little wordy, but I think that works. Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, weary, like she was unprepared for the photographer. She was unprepared for the photo. Let's just say unprepared for the photo. Unprepared to take the photo? Same blue-gray eyes. Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, weary, like she's unprepared to take the photo. Same blue-gray eyes. I feel like this detail is getting lost now between these, but I don't dislike what I wrote, so I don't really know what to do. Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, weary, like she's unprepared to take the photo. I guess the reason why I have this here is because I'm not going to change the word blue-gray. Usually I would change it to like denim. The reason why I'm keeping it is because I know that Foster's blue-gray eyes are like really important. I guess that's what I thought was like a really cool descriptor when I was 13, so I'm not going to take that away from myself. If I were to specify blue-gray, I would most likely just consolidate that into a stronger adjective, such as like jean or something. I'm going to add this. I don't want to add the word just, but I'm just going to add this. This is not perfect, I'm sorry. Just like her son. So I'm just going to specify, obviously, bring in the fact. I knew, obviously, that the blue-gray eyes are important because Reeve always describes him with blue-gray eyes. So we would know that same is in relation to Foster, but I'm just going to clarify that just because this excerpt is standing alone. But anyway, and I think it works better for the flow because I added this chunk. It's not perfect. My eyes shift over to his father, tall and lean. My eyes shift over. Again, we're in first person, so we don't really need that. So I understand it's more of like a transition, but I'm just going to change this to his father is tall and lean. How do we know that somebody's tall from a picture? Because you might think I'm tall from my videos because you can't see the low. Do people show their entire body in a family portrait? Probably not. I'm not tall. Contrary to not popular belief, I thought I was my whole life, but I was being lied to. I'm only 5'3". His father, tall and lean. What I'm trying to say is it probably makes no sense that she knows that he's tall because most likely the portrait is like bust up. I don't know. I feel like there's more important things to say that his father's like skinny and like has glasses. Let's just say like his father, tall and lean. So clearly he's maybe a little bit gaunt. Like that's kind of what I'm seeing from this. Looks hollowed out like a skeleton with the same blue-gray eyes. Does that work? So his father looks hollowed out like a skeleton with the same blue-gray eyes. I should probably mention this is young adult, so I don't know if I would particularly write this in the way that I do. I usually edit it with my literary style a little bit. Then perched in front of him is Holly, who is Foster's sister. And for my mathwork people, Lonan's ex-girlfriend who dies in a cult that was into blood drinking. Then perched in front of them is Holly, bright smile, dark hair slicked back in a ponytail, same blue-gray eyes. Bright smile. I used to use this descriptor a lot when I was younger. It seems specific. Bright smile. The smile is bright. We're describing it by using an adjective, and using an adjective therefore means it's specific. Debunked, actually, using an adjective doesn't mean that the writing is particularly specific. Like this, bright doesn't tell us anything about what the smile looks like. So specific would be like each of her teeth look like perfectly placed into her mouth. Her smile is overexposed in the photo because of how bright it is, because she has white teeth or something. I think bright, I don't know what I meant by that. It could mean like she's happy, or like it could be the literal exposure of her smile. Let's see. Then perched in front of them is Holly. Smile so bright well, how am I supposed to say this? Then perched in front of them is Holly, smile so bright. Let's say it washes out in. Then perched in front of them is Holly. Let's say something. Her teeth become singular. I don't know That doesn't really make sense. Then perched in front of them is Holly, smiles so white her teeth become singular. I don't like that. So white her teeth overexpose. I'm just gonna say this, even though I know this is wrong. In the camera shutter. I guess that's not incorrect. Then perched in front of them is Holly, smiles so white her teeth overexpose in the camera shutter. I guess so. Is that incorrect to say? I should know, but I don't. So that's okay. Dark hair slicked back in a ponytail, same blue-gray eyes. I'm going to delete this dark hair bit. We've already had a bunch of descriptions of Holly with her dark hair and her her Ariana Grande ponytail. I don't really think that that's a very interesting detail, so I'm going to delete it. Even though it's like specific, she slicked her hair up in a ponytail. It's not just hair. I don't really think it's super necessary. So sometimes you have to weed out unnecessary specific details. I'm kind of the queen of adding extraneous details, but anyway, same blue-gray eyes. So now we have this paragraph is a bit cleaned up. And then we have a new paragraph here that I guess I added for emphasis, but there's no Foster. I'm just going to leave it like that because I guess that works. I'm going to move this paragraph at the bottom up to, but there's no Foster, and from the look of this picture, it's relatively new and they haven't bothered to take it down. Take one with him. I guess from what I mean in this last sentence is from the looks of this picture, like what they look like, they haven't bothered to take it down. Like that's how she knows it's new. I guess she would know that from what Holly looks like because she knows Holly. I guess this line makes sense. In another life, I would come back and clarify this a little bit, this particular line, because we are not really sure how she gets to that conclusion of how she knows that it's relatively new, like, and from the looks of this picture. So in here I could say, and from the looks of details that she would know from Holly because she's seen her in real life that would indicate that the picture is new. She doesn't know his parents, Reeve. She's never seen the parents, so she doesn't know if that's what they look like 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but she would know what Holly looks like 2 weeks ago when this picture was probably taken. I'm not going to add that because I personally don't know how, and this has gotten quite long. This is something I would tinker with for a bit, or I would add subtext, or I would just add something before this to explain how she knows that the picture is new. But I know how she knows. I'm just going to move on. So now the excerpt says, the walls of his living room are faded yellow and tiled with impasto paintings of gardenias and calla lilies. It's what's in the center of the mosaic that catches my attention. I drop my spoon into my bowl, the milk gone pastel and gummy with cereal, push out of my chair and walk closer to the family picture. The portrait's frame is a copper color. Is copper in color, or it could just say copper. Rustic looking, all intricate twists and bends like the bough of a redwood. I brushed my hand over the photograph. Foster's mother stands on the far right, dark hair twisted into a high bun, weary, like she was unprepared to take the photo. Same blue-gray eyes, just like her son. His father looks hollowed out like a skeleton with the same blue-gray eyes. Then perched in front of them is Holly, smile so white, her teeth overexposing the camera's shutter. Same blue-gray eyes, but there's no Foster, and from the looks of this picture, it's relatively new, and they haven't bothered to take it down. Take one with him. So clearly, voila, that's the end of that paragraph. I hope that some of my tips were coherent. That's how I would personally just punch up the details a little bit. I think that the writing was actually quite strong. I was 13. Come on, girl. Like, yes, sis. I can't even write that well sometimes nowadays. That's just a few examples of how you can take a little bit more vague details or details that weren't there and where to sort of implement them. Because usually your writing gives you cues on when you can put details in. I didn't really notice that as much when I was younger. Like, oh, the writing is cueing me in to put in a detail here, like I dropped my spoon into my bowl, the milk on pastel and gummy. Like that was more of a natural cue to pace out the scene a little bit more. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to move on to the second excerpt. All right, and so now we're back for the second excerpt, which actually comes from book 3 of Fostered. So we're really moving through the series in this video. This is actually from one of my favorite parts of book 3 and of Fostered in general. So essentially what's happening in this scene, just for some context, because there's some dialogue and Lonan's here. Essentially, Lonan and Reeve are on this little segment of book 3 that I like to label Lonan and Reeve alone. Like if you've ever watched Avatar, there's this episode called Zuko Alone where like Zuko goes on a whole bunch of like little sort of adventures by himself. This is essentially that, but in Fostered. And in this particular instance, Reeve and Lonan, who have recently found out that they're related after years of trying to kill each other, are kind of bonding. And so this is like my favorite part of all of Fostered. Nothing I can write now probably will ever top this part of the series for me. I was onto something when I was 13. I just adore this part with so much of my heart. So in this particular part of Lonan and Reeve alone, Lonan and Reeve stumble upon this kind of strange group of kids. I got this idea when I was in New York City, and on that trip I wrote like 12,000 words over like 2 days. It was kind of nuts. Oh my God. But essentially they come across this sort of strange scene, which is a group of children. They're all like young kids to teenagers who are essentially in a marching band, or at least that's what it appears to be. It looks like they're kind of on the side of the road performing. And in particular, one of these people in this group is one of Reeve's friends who she met about a year prior. His name is Philip. She thought he died, but he actually survived and is now in this marching band, and she's shocked because she's seeing her friend, which is what the description, which I'm going to work on, for the first time in a very long time, and she's obviously very surprised because she thought he was dead. Yeah, I think it's really important to look at the positives of the work when you're critiquing it too. Critiquing is not just bad things, it's also being balanced and respectful in the way that you say things. This is my own work, so I can disrespect it if I want to. No, I'm joking. Don't disrespect your work. It's very important to be kind to yourself and be kind to your work. So anyway, this is the description. He's taller now, the year and a half's worth of time enough to stretch him to a taller height. Even his expression has changed somewhat, sharper jaw, which in turn accentuates the longer nose. The usual flop of ruby against his forehead is less familiar as his hair is styled combed back, but still shines the bright cherry red. He looks more worn than anything else, but happens to look put together with his long fingers clasped around the base of his drum, sporting the same sleek uniform as the rest of them. But still, there's something strange with Philip. Maybe it's because of the distant look to him, or I think I meant this distant look of him, the too hard, almost mean look to his eye. Maybe it's because he looks too worn, hollowed out cheeks, darkness under the eyes, details I can record even from my spot yards away. I force myself to keep calm. I tug on Lonan's sleeve, give a nonchalant point to the dead boy walking, standing in the back row of the rest of the band. See the redhead, I whisper. I know him. He died a year and a half ago. Lone stiffens, but nods regardless, keeping his grip tight around my arm. What do I do? Kind of interesting. There's a lot of tension there. Ooh, I like it. I want to read on. But so really what I'm going to target here is sort of this confusing. It's not bad. It's actually fine. It's just wordy. So I just need to trim it down and maybe specify some of these details a little bit more, like same sleek uniform. Sleek, again, adjective doesn't necessarily mean it's specific, like I was saying before. So he's taller now, the year and a half's worth of time enough to stretch him to a taller height. We already said he's taller now, the year and a half's worth of time, so we don't need this taller height. Year and a half's worth of time enough. Let's change it to he's taller now, the year and a half's worth of time enough for his head to brush against the white tent encasing the band. A little bit wordy, but that's okay. That's fine. We're going to move on. So even his expression has changed somewhat. There's so many typos. Oh my goodness. Even his expression has changed somewhat. Somewhat. There's not really quantifiable. And if we're trying to go for concrete language, specificity, which goes with concrete language, we want something a little bit more quantifiable than somewhat. Even his expression has changed. We don't even need this word because I go from this. I did this a lot when I was younger. I would go from a vague word to like the specific description. You don't need the vague word. Just be confident in the specific description. Even his expression has changed. Sharper jaw, which in turn accentuates the longer nose. I said expression. I think it's because I don't actually know why I said expression. It's not really his expression that she's talking about. Expression is like the emotion almost, like the way his face is positioned, like happy expression, mad expression. She's literally talking about his face. So even his face has changed. Let's say his nose that cranes, I guess, past his lip. I have no idea if that's the right word use of past. Even his face has changed. Sharper jaw, which in turn, we don't need this, which accentuates his nose that cranes past his lip. Little bit wordy, but again, that's okay. The usual flop of ruby against his forehead. I'm going to say ruby hair. I like this. Usual flop of ruby hair. Flop. I like that word. Against his forehead is less familiar. This makes it sound like he's wearing his hair in his face, like his hair's flopped into his face, when in reality she's saying that the old Philip used to have hair like that, but now it's styled combed back. So instead we're going to change it to less familiar to is now styled combed back. That's just combed back. That's just a clarity thing. The usual flop of ruby hair against his forehead is now styled combed back. That's such a tongue twister. Styled. We don't need styled. There we go. Tongue twister vanished. The usual flop of ruby hair against his forehead is now combed back, but still shines bright cherry red. That's not bad to me. I think that's fine. I'm just going to leave it. He looks more worn than anything else, but happens to look put together. I'm confused. We said he looks more worn, but he's put together. I'm confused. She's not close, so I can't describe a lot of things I would usually pull for, like maybe like his under eyes, if you were talking about being worn, or his cheeks. She's not that close, but she's close enough that she recognizes him and can describe him. I honestly don't know if this is necessary. He looks more than anything else. I'm just going to delete it. He looks more worn. I don't know. I feel like indicators of somebody looking worn would not be obvious unless you were closer to them. So because of that, I'm going to delete that. I'm going to invert these details. So I'm going to move the same sleek uniform as the rest of them upward here. So I'm going to change sleek to navy. I feel like navy blue uniforms can't not be sleek, right? So I'm just going to change it to that. He wears the same navy uniform as the rest of them. Happens to look put together. Philip has always looked put together. Let's not spit on him. He's not just put together because he's wearing a suit. He's even more put together. So he wears the same navy uniform as the rest of them. His long fingers clasped around the base of his drum. Why do we need the word long? That's kind of bizarre. Okay. His fingers clasped around the base of his drum. What kind of drum is it? So this is where I would specify congas. No, he's not using, it's a snare drum. There, I remember. Fingers clasped around the base of his snare drum. And then we're just going to end the sentence there because we inverted the detail. So that works. Now we're just going to move on. But still, there's something strange with Philip. I did this add a paragraph when a line is kind of more important thing a lot. I'm not going to delete it. I think it's fine. I think it's kind of like a cool reveal, especially since we haven't seen him in a book and a half. So I'm just going to leave it as its own paragraph because if there were hypothetical readers, they'd be like, oh my God, he's alive. Maybe it's because of the distant look to him, the too hard, almost mean look to his eye. Maybe it's because he looks too worn, hollowed out cheeks, darkness under the eyes, details I can record even from my spot yards away. Ooh, look at me. 13-year-old me was making up for the clarity, the logic issue of how can she even see that. But anyway, maybe it's the distant look to him. I don't even really like this part. I wonder if this is even relevant. I'm going to delete this paragraph. That's kind of a choice that I would maybe take a little bit more time to make. I'm going to delete it just because I think it'll actually work better with the flow if we have this character description of what Philip looks like now, and then we jump a little bit closer to her dialogue. I feel like that would work better for the flow. But still, there's something strange with Philip. I jump back into the character description here, which I don't think is really relevant. If anything, maybe I would move one of these details up here. But for the sake of time, I'm just going to move on. Again, I forced myself to keep calm. This is very relevant in YA, I think, at least the YA I was reading back in 2015. But again, I don't really think it's necessary for a first person point of view. We'll understand how she feels if she's narrating it. So, but still, there's something strange with Philip. I tug on Lonan's sleeve. So she's tugging on her older brother's sleeve, which they don't really have a very personal relationship at this point. It's not very close. So the fact that she's going to him to be like, there's something wrong, will indicate to the reader there's something wrong. So we don't need to say, oh, I have to keep myself calm. She's going to Lonan to report that something's not right. And because of that, we as the reader who would already know that they don't really have a very close relationship could infer, oh, there's actually something that's not right, because if you're going to Lonan to tell him that something's not right, clearly something's not right. I tug on Lonan's sleeve, give a nonchalant point to the dead boy walking. We don't really need the nonchalant point. I don't understand who she's being nonchalant for, because it's not Lonan and it's not for the band, because they don't see them. The children don't see Lonan and Reeve, so it's not like she has to keep calm. And she already says he died a year and a half ago to Lonan, so it's not like she's like, oh, see that guy over there? I kind of knew him once. She's like, see that guy over there? He was actually dead. So we don't really need this nonchalant part. I tug on Lonan's sleeve and point to the dead boy walking, standing in the back row. I'm just going to delete standing. I'm going to say point to the dead boy walking in the back row. of the marching band. And then her dialogue, see the redhead, I whisper. I don't really like the word whisper, but we're just going to leave it. I think obviously she's whispering, so it's fine. You could also say said, that's fine, or says. I know him, he died 1.5 years ago. The reason I included this excerpt is because I love this dialogue. I just like it. It's not what I was expecting when I read it. I was like, oh, that's good. I want to read on, you know? I'm going to change Lone to Lonan. Lone used to be Reeves' like nickname for Lonan back when I was writing book 3 and 4. And then it kind of fell off the train when everybody started calling each other by their full names. Like Harrison's nickname is Riss, but I don't call him that often unless I repeat his name too much in narrative nowadays. When everybody started getting mad at each other, they started using their full names. And so since then, since about book 5, I haven't really used their like nicknames, and I think his nickname's kind of funny. Lonan stiffens, but nods regardless, keeping his grip tight around my arm. He died. Lonan stiffens, but nods. What? Why would he just nod? Stiffens, but nod. He's like, but keeps his grip. Like, let's say like Lonan stiffens his grip around my arm, tightening around my arm. I think that's fine. It's not the biggest edit ever. So the excerpt is now, he's taller now, the 1.5 years worth of time enough. Okay, sorry. I missed this whole part. He's taller now 1.5 years. I changed this to, he's taller now 1.5 years of time enough for his head to brush against the white tent encasing the band. Even his face has changed sharper. This is a bit wordy, the second sentence. Anyway, sorry. Even his face has changed to sharper jaw, accentuating his jaw that cranes past his lip. The usual flop of ruby hair against his forehead is now combed back, but still shines the bright cherry red. He wears the same navy uniform as the rest of them, his fingers clasped around the base of his snare drum. But still, there's something strange with Philip. I tug on Lonan's sleeve and point to the dead boy walking in the back row of the marching band. See the redhead? I whisper. I know him. He died 1.5 years ago. Lonan stiffens, his grip tightening around my arm. What do I do? So that's how I would go about that. It's a pretty light edit. But I'm happy with that. I think it is just accentuating what was already there, which is what I love about specificity and just line editing in general. It's all about just accentuating what you already have, and clarity, which I always talk about in these videos. Specificity, concrete language is always the best bet to do that. That's my holy trinity. And the reason why I so strongly believe in it is because it's really the #1 way to accentuate your style. All right, and so now we're on to the last excerpt of the video, and this is actually more of an example of writing that I actually really liked because of the specific detail. I'm going to punch them up a little bit, but I just wanted to show you an example of integrating specific detail. So this was written in 2016 or 2017, so about 2 years after the other excerpt. So this excerpt is from book 6 of Fostered. And so as you can see, my style really developed. So if you are kind of still reaching for your style, really it just takes some time. From the first excerpt, you can tell my style was developing a little bit in terms of like description and where I'm at now. And so this is a bit more of an accurate writing to how I would write now. This is not recent by any means, but I think it has a lot of things I stand for, which is like specificity, concrete detail, just imagery and stuff. So I wake to the scent of permanent marker. Synthetic, pungent, it burns through my nostrils like a pistol whip to the cheek. The silver of his ring still bitters my mouth, though I wouldn't be surprised if most of what's coating my tongue is actually blood. From the finger I mauled or from sinking my teeth into my tongue, I'm not quite sure. It's dark down here, humid and musty too, like no one's inhabited this space long enough to crack a window and air out the place. While I can't recall the last time I entered this room, I know I'm in the basement just from the way the carpet bites at my elbows. If I looked at the fibers of this floor under a microscope, I'm sure I would find specks of my peeled off flesh along with my sister's embedded in every filament. Mom wanted hardwood, but Dad always managed to convince her oppositely. He didn't have to say much. Maybe a next year, Izzy, next year for sure. And when she persisted, a helpless smile, and eventually she caved. He caved, sorry. It wasn't that she hated the carpet. She just thought it made the place look like the inside of her grandmother's bathroom and scraped at knees more than it should have. My father went out of his way to do everything my mom wanted for him, even when she didn't ask if Friday night dinners could start back up again. He somehow knew what she wanted, a man hopelessly in love, loving her with care. I still haven't figured out why he turned down the hardwood. This is great. I like it. I think it needs a little bit of cleaning up, but really not much. I think we introduce a lot of interesting ideas. We go from the present scene to the fictive past right here with the mother and the dad and the hardwood and stuff, and then we characterize the parents. Every single excerpt that I edit in these videos features Reeve's parents. Isn't that amazing? I don't think I've gone one video without talking about her parents, and so we get to see a little bit more of the mother. She's a bit persistent. She kind of gets what she wants. The father, who is really caring, who loving his wife, and who apparently will not give her hardwood for some reason. So even Reeve's confused about that, because he seemed like he would be the kind of person to give her whatever she wanted in a sense. But this is an example of like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. This excerpt would sort of be stage 3, where I'm already incorporating these specific details naturally just because of practice. So practice can do wonders for your writing. If you're wondering how you can write more specifically, actively try to do it, incorporate it into your writing, but also remember that sometimes these things take practice. If you're reminding yourself, oh, I want to write more specifically, you'll probably start implementing that naturally into your own work. So that's a great place to start, to be honest. Just start practicing. Doing description exercises is also a great way to write more specifically, but honestly, just identifying your nouns is a wonderful way to punch up your writing. You could have a really basic sentence. Like you could say like, I went to the store, or you could say I went to the deli. And the word deli is like, to me, it sounds better. It has a better ring. The musicality is there. Again, like for me, writing is all about rhythm. It's all about sound. It's like writing a song, but it's just a story. And so that's how I personally like to think about prose. Here we're going to start with, I wake to the scent of permanent marker. I like that. It's unexpected who wakes up to the scent of permanent marker and notices that it's permanent marker. You all know that scent too. Synthetic, pungent, it burns through my nostrils like a pistol whip to the cheek. I wrote a lot like this where I would have adjectives and then I would put the sentence. I don't dislike it. I just think it was indicative of my style at the time. I don't really do this as much anymore. I don't know if I need both of these adjectives. I'm going to keep synthetic. It burns through my nostrils. The reason why I cut pungent is because it burns. So we can feel that. We can, as the reader, can viscerally understand that that would be a pungent reaction that she's having. So synthetic, it burns through my nostrils like a pistol whip to the cheek. I really like this, like a pistol whip to the cheek. This is really relevant to the voice of like the older Fostered books. Like it's very much a dystopian. And while this book in particular isn't dystopian anymore, I think that's a kind of like a cool thing to pull on. But this in particular is quite in the vocabulary of this atmosphere. So the silver of his ring still bitters my mouth. We're talking about Darren, and this is a really kind of strange scene. It's from Double Jointed of Rewired, where Reeve and Darren go on this kind of fun trip together so that he wants to make her feel better. Essentially, he's being a really nice person. What happens is they go to her house in New York and she's surprised to see her brother. So Lonan is actually in this house, but he's like really beat up. This was like back when I was shedding some of that dystopian stuff. So he's really beat up in like one of the bedrooms. And so she's really concerned because at this point, her and Lonan have created sort of a parasitic relationship that they both feed off of. And so she's really close to him at this point. And so when she tries to go see him, even though Darren's like, that's a bad idea. You're not in a good headspace. You shouldn't do that. He's being very rational. She bites him. And so that's what this is. She bites his finger. It's kind of gross. Sorry. The silver of his ring still bitters my mouth. So I'm going to say Darren. Like, who is it? I do this still where I'll put a pronoun where a name should go because I feel like it adds like emphasis. I don't want to like give away who it is, but like we know it's Darren's ring. So I'm just going to say it's Darren's ring. Silver of Darren's ring still bitters my mouth. Though I wouldn't be surprised if most of what's coating my tongue is actually blood. At first I wasn't sure about that, but reading it again, I don't mind it. The silver of Darren's ring still bitters my mouth. Wouldn't be surprised if most of what's coating my tongue is actually blood. I'm going to leave this sentence the way it is. I don't love it, but I don't hate it either. So I'm going to move on. From the finger I mold or from sinking my teeth into my tongue, I'm not quite sure. Oh, this is a fragment. I'm going to delete it. I don't think that's really relevant. It's dark down here, humid and musty too. So it's dark down here. Why do I read everything once in this book and then read it again? And I'm like, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it was. It's dark down here. Like no one's inhabited this space long enough to crack a window and air out the place. Usually I wouldn't say it's dark down here. I would just say it's dark. But I feel like this pulls us a little bit closer psychically, which is why I'm finding it a little bit strange because like it's dark down here. That sounds more like a thought than narrative, but it's first person. So is it really a bad thing? I don't really know. This is what goes through my head when I'm editing. I'm going to leave it. Humid and musty too. Like no one's inhabited this space long enough to crack a window. This is a I was like really obsessed with reading The Girls by Emma Cline at this point, and I'm still obsessed with reading The Girls by Emma Cline, but I think I was really influenced by her use of fragments. So I'm just gonna remove a few because there are a lot of fragments. I love you, Emma, but humid and musty too, like no one's inhabited the space long enough to crack a window and air out the place. That's telling. We can tell nobody has been living in this house. You all know that dank smell of uninhabitants. It's kind of gross. That would have been a good line. The dank smell of uninhabitants. Ooh, I'm going to write that down for later. While I can't recall the last time I entered this room, I know I'm in the basement just from the way the carpet bites at my elbows. I like that. I'm hesitant about calling a basement a room, but because mine personally is one giant room, but I guess it's not wrong to call it a room, so I'm just going to leave it. I know I'm in the basement just from the way the carpet bites at my elbows. If I look at the fibers of this floor under a microscope, I'm sure I would find, I'm going to change it to carpet, specifying what the floor is. I'm sure I would find specks of my peeled off flesh. This is so gross, I'm sorry. I'm going to change peeled off flesh. I would find peels of my flesh along with my sisters embedded in every filament. And just from the changing of those two words, from I'm sure I would find specks of my peeled off flesh, which is a bit wordy, we go from I'm sure I would find peels of my flesh along with my sisters. It's a bit more lyrical. To me, it's less wordy. It's already much better just from that one simple change. And then we're going to jump into this backstory here. So mom wanted hardwood, but dad always managed to convince her oppositely. Always managed to. I'm just going to say always convinced her oppositely. He didn't have to say much. Maybe a next year, Izzy, next year for sure. And when she persisted, a helpless smile and a helpless smile. It feels like it's missing a detail here. It's kind of bizarre. I'm going to add some weird dialogue here. Just excuse me. Look, right now I'm looking up carpet material. We'll say, but wool on toes is like, what is wool on toes like? Cucumbers for the eyes? I'm just gonna say, okay, Izzy, because he had dialogue, I'm going to answer back. So I added in this weird little dialogue here, but I thought that the dialogue made most sense so that she could answer back his next year for sure. So, and when she persisted, a helpless smile, but wool on toes is like, cucumbers for the eyes. I should maybe say cucumbers under eyes for the eyes. Maybe next year, Izzy, next year for sure. And when she persisted, a helpless smile, but wool on toes is like cucumbers under eyes. It made the basement look like her grandmother's bathroom and scraped up knees more than it should have. My father went out of his way to do everything my mom wanted for him, even when she didn't ask if Friday night dinners could start back up again. If Friday night dinners. That's kind of vague. What can I say? Even when she didn't ask if. It's a little bit vague, but more of a nod to the last excerpt with this family eating food. Even when she didn't ask if Friday card games and dinners could start back up again, he somehow knew what she wanted. It's instead of just Friday night dinners, because, do they never eat dinner together otherwise? That could be an interesting thing to explore. Not what I'm going to do in this video, but that could be pretty interesting. For me, for example, my family's so busy we don't usually eat together. A man hopelessly in love, loving her with care. I still haven't figured out why he turned down the hardwood. So, to me, honestly, I feel like this is fine. I'm going to change this to no markup. Really, what I want to show you here is where in this paragraph I have inserted specific detail. So I wake to the scent of permanent marker. Synthetic, it burns through my nostrils like a pistol whip to the cheek. This is a pretty specific simile. The silver of Darren's ring. Bitters is a really good verb. It's a specific verb. So I'm just going to highlight that. We know what that would taste like. Wouldn't be surprised if most of what's coating my tongue is actually blood. This is the only part I don't really love anymore, but that's okay. It's dark down here, humid and musty too. It's dark. We have humid and musty. No one's inhabited this space long enough to crack a window and air out the place. This is pretty specific too as well. Well, I can't recall the last time I entered this room. I know I'm in the basement just from the way the carpet bites at my elbows, not just like the floor. If I look at the fibers of this carpet under a microscope, I'm sure I'd find peels of my flesh, along with my sisters embedded in every filament. This is pretty specific as well. It's kind of gross. I'm sorry. It's so grossly specific. Mom wanted hardwood, but dad always convinced her oppositely. He didn't have to say much, so she wanted hardwood. She didn't want linoleum. She didn't want tile. She wanted hardwood. Maybe a next year, Izzy next year for sure, in which he persisted a helpless smile, but wool on toes. Wool, not just like fabric or carpet, tile or whatever, carpet weaving, I don't know. Wool on toes. Should it say wool under toes or something? I don't know. I'm second guessing myself, whatever. It's like cucumbers under the eyes. So eventually he caved. Maybe I need an and. Maybe a next year, Izzy next year for sure, and when she persisted a helpless smile, about wool under toes is like cucumbers under the eyes. I'm just changing the sentence structure. He eventually caved, so it makes sense. It wasn't that she hated the carpet, she just thought it made the basement look like her grandmother's bathroom. This is where I might add a little bit more detail. What did her grandmother's bathroom look like? However, in this particular sentence, I wouldn't add too much specific detail just because it's going to break up the flow, and I don't really want to sacrifice the flow of this sentence for specific detail. It wasn't that she hated the carpet, she just thought it made the basement look like her grandmother's bathroom and scraped up knees more than it should have. I can change it to, it wasn't that she hated the carpet, she just thought it made the basement look like her grandmother's bathroom, gaudy, like the 60s, pastel, and crawling with fabric-covered appliances. I could say something like that, and scraped up knees more than it should have. It's not bad. I could add that in there, but I feel like it might ruin the flow from and scraped up knees more. My father went out of his way to do everything my mom wanted from him, even when she didn't ask if Friday night card games, here we go, and dinner could start back up again. He somehow knew what she wanted. Again, Friday night card games, I could maybe say Friday night. They were playing Parcheesi in the last excerpt, so maybe I'll just change it to Friday night Parcheesi and dinner. Could start back up again. He somehow knew what she wanted, a man hopelessly in love, loving with her care. I still haven't figured out why he turned down the hardwood. So the final excerpt reads like this. I wake to the scent of permanent marker. Synthetic, it burns through my nostrils like a pistol whip to the cheek. The silver of Darren's ring still bitters my mouth, though I wouldn't be surprised if most of what's coating my tongue is actually blood. It's dark down here, humid and musty too, like no one's inhabited this space long enough to crack a window and air out the place. While I can't recall the last time I entered this room, I know I'm in the basement just from the way the carpet bites at my elbows. If I looked at the fibers of this carpet under a microscope, I'm sure I'd find peels of my flesh along with my sister's embedded in every filament. Mom wanted hardwood, but Dad always convinced her oppositely. He didn't have to say much, maybe a next year Izzy, next year for sure, and when she persisted, a helpless smile, but wool under toes is like cucumbers under the eyes. He eventually caved. It wasn't that she hated the carpet, she just thought it made the basement look like her grandmother's bathroom and scraped up knees more than it should have. My father went out of his way to do everything my mom wanted from him, even when she didn't ask if Friday night, Parcheesi, and dinner could start back up again. He somehow knew what she wanted. A man hopelessly in love, loving her with care. I still haven't figured out why he turned down the hardwood. So that's the final excerpt. I think that turned out quite well. I didn't really make many changes, but as you can see, I've injected specificity in different ways in here. Sort of in the adjective, this is pretty specific. The way that the permanent marker interacts, the simile is pretty specific. The tastes are specific. What she feels, it's dark, humid, and musty, like no one has been in the space long enough to air it out. We know that feeling. Things like that. I could also have said something like muggy, but those are some examples on how I would go about specifying even more so an excerpt such as this one. The sun has very much gone down since I started filming this video, so I'm going to wrap it up here, but I hope that this helps. This was a kind of a chiller version of the last few videos. It's not as in-depth, but I'm pretty happy with how these excerpts turned out. If you guys have more requests for what kind of things you want to see in a video like this, let me know. I was actually also thinking of perhaps doing a viewer submissions video like this. I wasn't sure if anyone would send me anything, but if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, where I edit viewer work, that could be kind of cool, but let me know. But yeah, like I said, if you have anything you want me to cover in the next line edit with me style video like this, let me know and I will do my best to cover it. But I hope that what I shared in this video was helpful for you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!